Welcome to Vets Week 2020. I'm Michael Black, Colonel United States Air Force retired, a member of the City Club of Washington, D.C., and also a member of the Veterans Committee. Today, I have the opportunity to interview one of my mentors and one of my good friends, Michelle Gardner-Entz, Colonel United States Air Force retired. GI, it's a pleasure to be able to interview you today and talk to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing today?
As a member of the Office of Small Business at the Department of Veteran Affairs, my mission is to increase the number of veteran women entrepreneurs in the commercial and federal marketplace as its director.
All right. So GI, can you explain a little bit more about exactly what you're doing there at the OSDBU and how you're helping women-owned, veteran-owned businesses?
Sure. First, I'd like to talk about what was the catalyst behind the program, which in January of 2021 will be 2 years since this initiative, the Women Veteran-Owned Small Business Initiative, began. And so as we were looking at our particular goaling numbers, and we have the same goal as any other federal agency of 5%, what we realized is we have been so focused on supporting our veteran businesses through our Veteran First program that our woman-owned small business goal has suffered since 2005. Having said that, the department's fastest growing demographic is women veterans, to the point where VA is spending millions of dollars building entire clinics. So if we would spend that kind of money to take care of them, their health, then we also want to include their wealth or their economic opportunities. And so what we're doing is we're partnering with various education, commercial, other federal agencies and nonprofits to create programs that build business resiliency for these ladies.
Well, that's awesome. And I noticed you use a term that's easy to remember, health and wealth. I believe you also have an acronym or a saying, I think it's called Uncle Sam.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
The federal acquisitions landscape is tough. It's bureaucratic, it's hard to understand. And so people don't really, especially ladies, don't really know, how do I enter this market? How do I get that first contract? Well, SAM is all about solve a problem, address an issue, or meet a need. And you do this by first starting your business as an LLC. And instead of being a 1099, I learned a lot from my mistakes, you are a W-2 employee. So you go to other service disabled, vet-owned businesses, small businesses, even the commercial industry, and you look for a job where you can bring Uncle Sam, where you can solve a problem, you can address an issue, and you can meet a need. When they say they want to hire you, you say, no, no, no. I want you to hire my company instead of me. I don't need benefits because I've got VA benefits. Oh, by the way, it is high risk, as I tell people, but it's also high reward. So once you get in and you are working as a single member of your business, you now get to tell the company or negotiate with the company, I don't need to show up 5 days a week. I can do this job in 3 days with these deliverables, this frequency, this quality. And oh, by the way, the other 2 days, I'm going to be working on building other business for myself. Now, once you use that model, if you were an employee and there was a problem that was outside of your job, you'd be told to just fix it. Now that you are a business, you see a problem, you see an issue, you see a need, you go, oh, that's not in my contract, but I can solve that. And so now you then give them the solution, you negotiate the price, you hire 1 or 2 more people to handle that solution. Oh, by the way, you're bringing Uncle Sam with you. Now you have a company where you can start working less in the business and work on the business. So that's the whole concept that I'm really passionate about. It's called the Vetpreneur Mindset. And it's basically saying bring the skills that Uncle Sam gave you and solve a problem, address an issue, or meet a need.
That's awesome. And I know you you have a passion for things, and I personally benefited from your passion of mentorship and leadership.
You're too
But
kind.
how did you go about getting the support of the larger VA for that? Because I know that they backed you in this endeavor, but
Yes.
how did you go about doing that?
A lot of it's relationship. And just like you're building, doing business development for a company, I'm doing program development. So I have relationships with small business liaisons, in the various administrations, VHA, which is health, VBA, which is benefits, and
Right.
National Cemetery, which is cemeteries, as well as OIT, and the construction arenas. And this is really a strategic focus in that we're not here for women who want to do business. You got a coffee shop, t-shirt, wine, that's okay, but that's not really why we're here. Our law that governs the small business office and the woman-owned office, business is all about helping women veterans navigate the commercial and the federal market landscape. So having said that, I have to go find people who have something that they want to buy. And these small business liaisons and the program decision makers, or we call them PDMs, are the people who want to buy. I call myself a yente. I'm a matchmaker. People say matchmaking all the time, but they don't really do it in a strategic manner. They bring two people together and you hope maybe somebody's buying or selling something. Instead, I'm focused on what are the needs of the buyers. The veteran businesses are my third stakeholder. I said third. The number one is the government decision maker who's buying. The second one is the commercial decision maker who's buying. And the last is the veteran. Because if the commercial and the federal buy, the veteran will get business and they'll get taken care of. So I really focus on matching needs with the ladies. And if I see a gap, then what I do is I say, okay, groom, what are they missing? And then I say, okay, I now know what I have to prepare the ladies to be able to do from business acumen, etc.
Well, that's awesome, and I like how you've not led the pandemic or the COVID environment, impact this. I've seen some of your podcasts and some of your virtual events where you are still going, regardless of the last in-person meeting or
Yes.
cohort that we have, which was about a year ago
Yep.
in last December. That I happened to come to one of your events with the I think that was your first cohort.
Yes, it was. We had 29 women, and a portion of them who were ready brought in almost $20 million more last year than they did prior to the cohort. So this next year, our focus is to prepare more women to be prime vendors, because some of those, women are out there getting business, but they still are less than 10% of the VA database where companies are selected from and verified for contracts. But the reality is we must prepare women to be the prime, not the subcontractor, because only then, I tell people, I want to put points on the board. The only way we put points on the board for the goal is for women to be prime vendors, and currently we're at 1%. So it's stretch. It's a big stretch, but we're gonna give it our best. And we've got a lot of partners inside the department as well as out.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, again, thank you for all that you do and your passion. It continues to show, and I know others are just as appreciative as I am. So thanks again for being a part of this Vets Week 2020. And we didn't let the COVID environment slow us down. We're continuing to be able to do things for our vets, and welcome to the City Club. I know you're a new member, so thank you.
I'm excited. I can't wait for us to get past COVID so we can do some stuff, to Ben and join you on the veteran committee on helping our members.
Well, thank you. One piece I'd like to focus on is the COVID environment and how we've had to pivot or adapt or become innovative in things. And I know there's some things that you've done with your program and with the cohorts and with the women-owned veteran businesses to pivot in this COVID-19 environment. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. There's several things. Some people rushed out and immediately started doing, webinars and Zoom meetings. And I thought it was important to really just, one, stay in touch with the ladies, find out how they're doing, because, it's tough to do business during this time. It's tough to engage with and build relationships. So one of the things I do for them is they can call me if they're trying to get in to see another federal agency, small business liaison or small business office. I will assist them with that, in addition to, getting access to people within the VA. We've done a couple of not podcasts, but webinars focused around, it's a new series called the My Business Journey series that we're doing twice a month, and I'm the host, where I'm bringing women on to share about their journey in business, as well as to provide education. So we've had 2 of those. They have gone extremely well, and that's a way to give them, in bite-sized 2-hour periods, information that we normally would have given them during an all-day session with other topics.
Wow, well, that creativity and innovation certainly helps in an environment, the current environment that we're in, and I know the women-owned, veteran-owned businesses are appreciative of that, and just the continuing education and to shorten the learning curve and to help folks. So again, thank you for your continued passion in helping folks. As I said earlier, I'm a benefit of it, and I know what it does, and I know what it's going to do for folks that you're helping. So thanks again, GI.
Thanks, Mike, for having me. Honored.
Today, I have Serena Washington, who is a member of the Veterans Committee with me at the City Club. So Serena, welcome.
Thank you for having me here, Michael.
It's great. What I'd like to do is really first touch on your career. I understand you were a pilot in the Army. If you could tell us a little bit about that, the type of aircraft you flew and what you did, and we'll go from there.
I am a former Army officer. I flew Blackhawks and Apaches. I was the first female Apache pilot in the Florida National Guard. I had the privilege of serving overseas for Operation Iraqi Freedom, not only as a pilot, but also cross-branched in military intelligence. So I got to see the entire battlefield throughout the CENTCOM AOR. And one of my daily objectives was to set the threat level from low to very high every morning for 40 different airfields in the CENTCOM AOR.
Wow, that's awesome. And to be a pilot and fly in multiple platforms, and really want to highlight, because there's not that many. Still, there's not that many women pilots. What was that like, being one of the first or the first in the Florida Guard?
I would tell you that there were many highs and lows. Yeah, I thought I always wanted to do it. It was a dream of mine. I was disciplined. I concentrated. I was full of passion and energy to want to do it, and I was successful. Now, it didn't come without others thinking that maybe it wasn't possible for me to complete my mission or be a woman warfighter, especially a woman who flies with guns. I'm a qualified and trained gun pilot, and it didn't come without questioning. However, I think as my onlookers had seen my achievements, my passion, and also my consistency in the aircraft and capability, then they were able to become more comfortable with it and really could enjoy flying with me.
Well, that's awesome. And then I think you also did a stint or spin in the Air Force, in the Air Force Reserves. I believe you were a chaplain candidate or supported the chaplain career field. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for several years, I trained in the United States Air Force as a chaplain candidate. And I was very heavily involved in mission work at the time. And that segues me into being a faith-based federal contractor today, where I believe that we can take our mission work in through our business and greater and beyond globally to take those same heroic measures and operate them within our business, the same models and values that we obtained from the military. And today, I also sit on the Christian Medical Dental Association, Washington, D.C. Board of Councils, where we have 19,000 physicians and associates and medical professionals that serve globally.
And speaking of globally, I know you're involved in some international work, and I believe you within the last year or so you returned from a trip over in Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think it was Ethiopia.
Yes, it was. That was a life-changing embarkment for all 120 missionaries that went over there. We were supported by McLean Bible Church and their global missions, and I was a chaplain. We went on a medical mission. My team were highly qualified physicians, and we really went there to help the children and the vulnerable populations, especially homeless and orphans, with Orphan Care Ethiopia as our partner. And we were able to serve over 650 patients, helping them with their healthcare, medicine, and getting them to a better place, and also being able to preach the gospel to them. It was a very successful trip, and I look forward to going back, and I also continue to support Ethiopian missionaries today.
Well, that's nice, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Having been a military dependent, my father was in the United States Army and actually was stationed in Ethiopia, 1968 to 1970, and the Emperor Haile Selassie was still alive. So I'm very familiar with Ethiopia, the needs of that country, and I have a personal passion and experience in relationship there. You also have your own business. You mentioned Washington Defense Corporation. In this pandemic environment, COVID-19, many folks have had to pivot and do things virtually or remotely and just adjust their business. Can you talk a little bit about Washington Defense Corporation and some of the things that you've done to pivot in this pandemic environment? Just tell us about your company and then maybe how you've pivoted.
Absolutely. So Washington Defense Corporation provides top cleared talent to the federal government in the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and the intelligence community. And we provide personnel, both CONUS and OCONUS, in mission critical, time sensitive scenarios. I believe that the government has been very adaptable recently during COVID to be able to go online, to conduct interviews online, to provide town halls online, and really continual to serve with us. And it hasn't been a problem. I actually think that we're more efficient now. And so we've had positive customer reviews that what we can do in 3 days, we can now do in 2. So I'm very proud about the new security posture that we're in and being able to continue to serve.
Well, that's fantastic. And how long have you been in business?
I've been in business for about 7 years. I started out in management consulting after the military. I had earned a master's in business, and I worked for Booz Allen Hamilton on the Defense Intelligence Agency South America account. And then I worked with Mantech International Corporation. And it's very interesting. That was the first time that I could work on border security and other campaigns beyond the Department of Defense. And we were able to help with US Visit and other large programs. Today, we're broadening the scope. So I sit on the FedSim Advisory Council as a co-chair for small business. And there's new acquisitions out right now, such as Astro. Astro is the largest defense vehicle that has ever been placed out for acquisition and procurement. Has an unlimited ceiling. So these are some of the factors where I want veterans to get involved. And we're going to be putting on a matchmaking event with the large systems integrators. I'm in charge of it, so the small business participants can do their matchmaking and be able to support large business needs.
That's awesome. Serena, I thank you for being a part of Vets Week 2020. I thank you for your faith-based work. I thank you for your service. As a veteran, obviously you serve, but you continue to serve and continue to look for ways to support veterans. I thank you for your leadership with me on the Veterans Committee at the City Club. And I know that your business is going to be successful because you're a person of much drive and persistence and very much a professional. And so I thank you for all that you've done. I thank you for adapting in this COVID-19 environment and just making a difference. So again, thanks for being with us for Vets Week 2020. Happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate your time today, and step into the future with WashingtonDefense.com.
My next interview for Veterans Week 2020 is Larry Stokes, the president and CEO of LSA Consulting, a veteran service organization. Larry, welcome to the interview. If you could tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and LSA Consulting.
A little about me. I am a 20-year Navy vet. I served, my occupation in the Navy was a hospital corpsman, later went on to be a physician assistant. I took a job with VA upon retirement after a couple years in private practice as a PA. VA was looking for folks with medical backgrounds to rate disability claims. I found that job very fulfilling to combine the unique area to combine my medical expertise with the legal training VA provided me, gave me a really good insight on this whole VA system. It kind of, when you think of something, you kind of fit in when you realize everything comes full circle. Your military experience, the medical experience, and then this, it came, it was a good experience for me. I started off as a general rater back in 1999. I later resigned from VA in 2006 after reaching up to an appeals rater. When I got my accreditation from Office of General Counsel in 2006, and I've been assistant veterans ever since. A little prior to that, I did some work with several VSO groups as a consultant, and also served as a national surrogate for President Obama during this when he ran for president in the Veterans for Obama.
About how many veterans would you say that you have helped with disability claims?
It's been thousands. I said it. I started off with a few. I was one of those folks. I started when I left VA. My goal was just to help a few veterans navigate the process and make it clear. I found that as a rater and as a vet myself, and me seeking VA benefits of my own, that process was so convoluted. I just took a different approach on informing the veteran, knowing the nuts and bolts of how that whole organization worked, and knowing what I know from my practice in medicine, knowing what folks come in, what I commonly see, and I see what these veterans are dealing with. Nobody else informing them of things that that they should be informed until much later in the process. So we came effective in that area. So it's been, as of today, it's been a couple thousand folks, a few thousand folks we've helped on how to move from point A to Z down that and know exactly what VA is looking for. And that's what we've been very effective in making things clear. Our goal is providing clarity on these benefits and how to achieve those.
You know, you bring a unique experience to the table with your medical background, and then also the legal training and the understanding of the actual process to file a claim and what goes through that. I learned something from your team as I was processing mine, and if you could just expand maybe a little bit on what a fully developed claim is, or if I'm saying it right, FDC or something like that?
It means veterans bring the information to the table that VA raters need to look at, and they can make a decision on their claim. So initially, we'll provide an analysis of your claim, what specific disabilities you're entitled. Then we get the medical evidence. So we have a vet meet with their medical provider and to get the evidence that a rater can make a decision without going through additional medical exams. Now, within that process, start off great. And as most things within VA, things change along the way. So that program has been going on for about 3-4 years or so, but it's changed. A veteran will submit a fully developed claim now, and they still will be subjected to a going examination. And that's where more of our expertise guidance comes in and say, well, no, hold on, we have a fully developed claim, we have medical evidence, and we get VA to use the medical evidence in this file, opposed to how the process works. One person in VA looks at your packet and they follow a schematic and they automatically set you for an exam, not knowing you got a fully developed claim. But we make them use that information to get to a rater or that person who did the same job I did and say, hey, we got evidence, we can make a decision. So I see that quite a bit with our fully developed claim. It has changed. The initial concept, veteran files a claim, there's medical evidence, a decision is made. And since then, I guess things were moving too fast for VA. So now we get veterans now who will file a claim and they still will get a letter and they will still be subjected to a medical exam. If you have guidance, if you have someone who's representing you, they can step in and actually tell VA and to make them aware. And that's one of the things uniquest thing we actually provide there.
Well, I thank you for being a part of Veterans Week 2020. This is an initiative that we're doing at the City Club, which you are a member, and the Veterans Committee at the City Club has put this together. And so it's nice to see your veteran service organization and serving veterans. So thanks again for participating, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike, and I appreciate the invite. Take care.
All right. As we get started with Veterans Week 2020 activities, I thought it'd be great to talk to John Warnack, the general manager here at the City Club, and personally thank him for his advocacy and support. So, John, thank you for your advocacy and support of the Veterans Committee. Can you just take a minute and tell us a little bit about the City Club of Washington, D.C.?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Colonel. Appreciate the nice introduction and welcome. The City Club is a private club, the most diverse club in Washington, and has been in this location for 12 years. And we just recently renewed our lease, and we're starting to reimagine, pivot, as the word goes now, our new look and our new menus, and so we can really aptly serve our membership and offer them really good, healthy food and beverage, but also a place to meet, a place to gather, somewhere to get out of the house for a change and get healthy again. It's been a tough year for everybody. And also, my particular interest is helping the veterans find a new job, find a job, or help them, if they do have a job, find their next great job. And we feel that we can do that and really help out a lot.
Well, that's awesome. I know, being a veteran myself, very appreciative of the support and advocacy that you personally give and that the club gives to veterans. You mentioned pivoting, and in this pandemic environment, a COVID-19 environment that we're in, how has the club had to pivot to meet the new challenge?
Well, obviously, based on the Mayor of Washington, D.C.'s guidance, we're adhering, and Club Corp actually has higher standards of managing the COVID-19 pandemic sanitation standards. So we have one-use menus. We sanitize the table after every use. We're constantly cleaning. We have masks, gloves, and sanitizer available at multiple places throughout the club, and of course practice social distancing at all times.
Well, that's awesome, and me being a member here of the City Club and also on the board, I've got to see that firsthand, and definitely appreciate you adhering to the local guidance from DC and the mayor, and also the CDC guidance. And once again, I just want to say thank you for your continued support and advocacy of the Veterans Committee here at the City Club as we get ready for our Veterans Week 2020. Thanks again, John.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We look forward to currently serving the veterans and moving forward into the 2021 year, really extend ourselves in multiple ways to help the veterans as much as possible. We really appreciate their service.
Thank you, and we appreciate you. Greetings, I'm Michael Black from the Veterans Committee here at the City Club, and I have the opportunity to talk to one of our own, General Carl Riddell, who is a veteran himself, and also he was the executive, or is the executive director of the Eisenhower Memorial. And so General, tell me a little bit about your military background first, and then we'll get into talking about the memorial.
My military background is probably focused around the fact of the Cold War.
Okay.
So I, as a young man, was living at a time when the defense of the country was a shared responsibility. So there was such a thing as the draft and conscription. So everybody in the part of the country that I lived in, born in the West and came to adulthood in the Midwest, served somewhere at some time to do something in support of the country. So that was an accepted behavior. And I came into the Air Force because I knew little about all of the services, but being drafted into the Army at that time, after I'd been putting myself through school, didn't look like an attractive proposition. So I just postponed that
Okay.
and later volunteered for the Air Force.
Awesome. And so you had a very successful career in the Air Force, and I believe that, if I remember right, you were a permanent professor at the Air Force Academy. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's correct. So the Air Force Academy, as you no doubt know, is a young institution. It's the youngest of all the service academies,
Yes.
and carries, as part of its history then, the fact of being around and in existence while the first graduates were still alive and kicking in a big way when I became an Air Force officer.
Right.
But I did not know or plan or predict that I would be at the Air Force Academy.
Well, that's very interesting to me. As you alluded to, I'm a graduate from the Air Force Academy class of 1985, and then my son is class of 2017. And so we've had several conversations about the Academy and in our connections, sir. That's very interesting. And so then you went on, as a permanent professor, and at some point you retired. And tell me what you did after you retired and leading up to the Eisenhower role that you had with the commission.
Well, what I would consider my most interesting dimensions of a military career would be tied to the fact that before I entered the military, I became very interested in Russia, and serendipitously found my way to, believe it or not, taking advantage of the emphasis of the president at that time, Dwight Eisenhower, Ike, on expanding Americans' knowledge of the world and the challenge of having peace when we were in a Cold War world. And that came to be a player in what I did or didn't do.
Wow. So, I mean, you had I don't know if it's correct to say a passion, but you were definitely had an interest in President Eisenhower and what he had accomplished. And so that seems to have dovetailed into, I guess, your position as the executive director. Is that a correct statement or a correct assumption, or how would you characterize getting from what you studied to that position?
Well, very simply put, I came to Eisenhower by way of Russia.
Okay.
And that happened as a result of a very specific assignment. One day I received a telephone call while I was on assignment at the Academy, and it said, they said, it was Colonel at the time, said, Colonel, we'd like you to take a team of young Americans into the Soviet Union. I said, really? And they said, yes. Well, what am I going to do there? And they said, you're going to help us destroy some missiles. And I laughed and said, you've got the wrong guy. I'm not a missile officer. And they laughed back and said, we'll take care of that. And in effect, they did. So that became a swing point in my life with regard to Eisenhower. I knew who Eisenhower was. I was in high school and college while Eisenhower was president. So I thought I knew Ike. And I discovered that I did not for a number of reasons, but that made a difference.
Well, that's awesome, and I've known you for a number of years here at the City Club, but you've been working with the commission for a while. I mean, can you tell me about that time period, because it didn't happen overnight?
Well, I came to it serendipitously, as many other people have with regard to Eisenhower, and by that I mean while I was on active duty doing these missile inspections with Russia, you could see that the Cold War wasn't over yet, but it was sort of like over the hill. It was the direction things seemed to be going. And we were very good at what President Reagan and Gorbachev, leader of the Soviet Union at the time, wanted to do. And they had together decided they were going to destroy a class of nuclear-capable missiles. The United States was interested in that at that time because these missiles had extraordinary accuracy and range as the Soviets were positioning them within the Soviet Union. And so it was a form of a real threat to us. And when that took place, fortunately from my viewpoint, Reagan, Gorbachev decided to execute it military to military, not State Department to State Department, but military to military. So there was a lot of pressure on those Russian officers and those American officers to get it right. And so it was an extraordinary opportunity for me, along with Navy captains, Army colonels, and Marine colonels and so forth, to lead these teams. And we were pretty much hand-picked, I'd say at the time, for having that rank, Russian capability. I was the first active duty officer from any service to go on the educational exchange to Russia. So as an active duty major, I lived with a Russian Communist Party member and a Soviet Navy veteran. So I lived with him for 6 months in a Russian dormitory.
And so then you have all this experience, and from my vantage point, you seem like a natural to be involved. That you have the education, the passion, and all that. And so you become involved with the Eisenhower Commission. And so what was that like? With getting started with that? I believe there was 4 senators and 4 congressmen, and then 4 presidential appointees, or some number like that.
Okay, that happened because I had begun to take a look in how they ended World War I and World War II, but especially World War II. I'm, as many others were, in World War III, so to speak.
Right.
And if I had suspicions about how we were ending World War III, I'm on active duty. And how do you work out your frustration? Well, I decided to take a look at World War II, and I decided for myself that we were pygmies living in a land of former giants. I was stunned. I thought I knew General Marshall. I thought I knew General Eisenhower, etc. I found I didn't for whatever reason. So I had begun at that time to look for a new position in the Department of Defense. I thought we were into a drawdown mode.
Right.
And I wanted to be part of the transitioning of the Warsaw Pact into the West. And I was trying to figure out how to do that. So I won't bore you with the rest of the story, but that led me to have an interest in Eisenhower.
Right.
So one day I literally get a call and say, one of my trustees at this major university, University of North Texas, former military officer, past mentor of mine, knew I was looking for a new job. And he said, what do you know about the Eisenhower World Affairs Institute? I said, I do not know it. And he said, well, it isn't exactly what you're looking for, but it sounds like you. So I came to Washington to be the president and CEO of a nonprofit devoted to Eisenhower because I was interested in this American.
Right.
That, simply put, is how I ended up in Washington. And then after I got here, they formed the commission.
Right.
So quite literally, at the first meeting in the Capitol of the United States, one of Senator Ted Stevens' staff people comes to me and said, "Would you help us put our work together?" And I said, "Well, perhaps I would need to talk to the man that asked me to come here." And I went to him. He was a chairman at that point of the commission. I said, his name was Rocco Siciliano. "Do you know anything about this?" "No." "What do you think, Carl?" I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "It's up to you." And I thought, sure, I'll help them put a small operation, whatever they're going to do. Of course I will. And 20 years later, I'm sitting here.
It was literally 20 years in the making, or maybe even more.
Think of me this way, Michael. Think of the junior officers you know today who speak Arabic fluently, have
Right.
time on the ground, who are really knowledgeable of the culture and so forth. They're pretty valuable to somebody.
Right.
I was like that during the Cold War. My Russian was of a high order. I had high quality background and degrees. I'm the first active duty officer to go to Russia. The last thing I did on that educational exchange is I organized the exit of 40 American exchangees from Moscow State University. That Russian university didn't like to deal with Americans individually. They were a pain in the neck, too individualistic. So we always, every month we elected a leader. 2 months in a row I was a leader. My last job was to arrange the exit of all these American civilians on this exchange from major universities, Harvard and others. And was that good training for me to come into the Soviet Union with a group of military officers? I had an idea how the system worked.
Wow. And so now we've got the memorial commissioned,
Yeah.
and but you know, as I reflect back on my study and knowledge of President Eisenhower, I see the uniqueness of, you know, a general officer, a 5-star general for that fact, and then also a president. And so there's lots of information out there about a person being a general and a politician. And could you say a little bit about that? I know there's a discussion, and I think you've even talked about that, I think, on some things that I've seen before.
Sure, I very well may have. The law that established this commission, and this commission is not an executive branch of the government, it's formed by the legislative branch.
Okay.
So we are a congressional commission, and we go away shortly with the completion of the memorial. So in that role, legislation was passed by this powerful Republican senator, Senator Ted Stevens, and a powerful Democratic senator, Senator Daniel Inouye from Hawaii.
Okay.
And those two men together in a bipartisan way decided there should be a memorial. They didn't know what, they didn't know where it would be, but they felt America needed to know about Ike. And it was very interesting for me to see, because these are two World War II combat decorated Americans coming to this subject not for scholarship, not for research, not because of books they had read, but because they believed that Ike was that big a leader. And they were both concerned that Americans would not really know who this great American was, these two civilians. So I'm, at that point, a former military officer, because I had taken early retirement to come to Washington to work with this nonprofit.
Right.
So I'm learning about all of this along the way. And that's how I came to do that. So that affected my whole time in the Air Force at that time.
Right.
Because the Cold War was going full bore, and it was a big threat and a big deal. It made me more internationally conscious than I would have ever possibly been. My first assignment wasn't even in the United States of America. I was sent to France for 4 years.
Wow.
A couple of sergeants at officer training school, my source of commission, called in 3 of us from my squadron. We had 600 people in my class at that time, and called us in and said, "Would you 3 officer trainees like to go overseas?" And we looked at each other and said, "Why not? Come back in a week and we'll tell you where you're going." And they lined us up. We didn't know what we were doing, and the sergeants were having fun. you are going to go to Tachikawa, Japan. You are going to go to Wiesbaden, Germany. And they pointed at me and said, you are going to go to APO 09083. I said, where's that? Can't tell you. It's classified. Sure it was. It was a low level of secure handling of zip codes, so military addresses wouldn't be immediately, et cetera. And we came back in a week, and so I found out what they meant was I'm being assigned to France. I had no idea before that second time I showed up. And so I went to France for 4 years. And while I was there, I was recruited by the political science department at the Air Force Academy, which had a very aggressive recruitment program at that time. And of course, later as a permanent professor, I learned what that was all about.
Oh, that's awesome. And so now we've got the memorial complete, and I've actually been there shortly after it was commissioned. I went and looked at it myself and saw the the thought that went into that, with really capturing his military and general officer experience, as well as his political and presidential experience, and then the statue of him as a boy, and how all that came together. So what is it like to actually see the finished product? I mean, you said 20 years. What was that like on that, happened to be, I guess, a very rainy day when it was commissioned, but what was that like to see the finished product and, cut the ribbon?
Well, it was truly stunning. I mean, it's very difficult for me to say what that was about. You just made reference to something which is pretty powerful and important. I discovered, as I began to learn about Eisenhower, from the world's leading specialists, that was our intelligence operation, by the way, from the world's leading specialists, that people tended to stovepipe Ike. They think of him either as the general,
All right.
or the president. Very rarely do they bring those two worlds fully together. Eisenhower is impressive as the general. He's impressive as the president. But what is this when you put that together? That's one man we're talking about.
Right.
That can be pretty compelling. And so these two senators wrote the law, and not knowing what it was going to be or how or where, they said, you have to do something to recognize the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in World War II, and that's why the general's column is there on the site. And you must also recognize the achievements of the 34th president. And so one of the challenges for the designer of the memorial was, how do you begin to bring elements of that world together? So that's, from my way of thinking, what that memorial represents, a step forward in this extraordinary man who I could go on telling you big things. He's the last general to be president of the United States. He is the only president to have worn the uniform professionally in World War I, in World War II, and Commander-in-Chief in World War III. This is the same man. And it is the first leader in world history that has within his personal control the nuclear weapons capable of destroying civilization.
Wow.
This is a big deal.
Yes, sir.
So when you look at that, modest, I don't call him humble. I don't think of him as a humble Supreme Commander.
Right.
I think of him as a modest Supreme Commander. So we've learned a lot about Ike, and we're trying to share him now with the broadest population, which is what I gather you experienced.
Yeah, it was a fantastic experience to go see that and view that and look at everything. And then, as we served on the Veterans Committee together here, I kind of followed what was going on, and just outside in the hallway we have a tribute to President.
That's special for this club.
Yes.
Yes, it really is.
So I was able to follow that as well. So, in the current situation that we're in with the pandemic or the COVID-19, the last 7-8 months of getting to the actual commissioning, how did you have to pivot a little bit, or maybe a lot, in your own words? How did you pivot to get to the finish line with this pandemic that was going on?
Really, the commission staff has had to pivot several times. Its mission changed as it went through the successive questions of where should the memorial be?
Right.
And they ended up getting a world-class site. Second question was, what the memorial should be, and they decided that it was a world-class legacy, and that needed to come together, a world-class site with a world-class legacy. Those things had to be somehow married, and they dictated as to when. So as the commission went through those different phases, it frankly needed different kinds of expertise to answer those questions. And my job and our job of this commission staff was to organize the work of 4 senators, 4 members of the House, and 4 presidential appointees. So I was not the decision maker. I was the one to work with this staff to present the work agenda to this legislative commission. And what happened with coronavirus, after all the time we'd worked to get to the memorial, but we were at the stage where it's going to be done or be done. And then when coronavirus came, you can imagine, just think of it, put that in military terms, not only changes in mission along the way, but all of a sudden new conditions under which to do anything. So we really wanted to do VE Day on the 75th anniversary of victory in Europe, which Eisenhower carried out under his personal supreme command.
Right.
And guess what happened? We were totally prepared for a full Eisenhower week of activities scattered throughout the District of Columbia. And we had a plan for 1,000 of the top people to be fitted into this memorial site. 1,000. Well, that came to an end, and you can imagine the kind of bureaucratic bloodletting with cutting that number of 1,000 to 250. So that 250 was what came to the dedication of the memorial on September the 17th of this year.
Wow. Now that is a pivot from 1,000 to 250, and making that happen, and making sure it's the right 250, and probably some feelings.
Well, part of my feeling, and thanks to the club, and it's one reason I was happy to hear you're doing something with veterans and Eisenhower, because Eisenhower was special with regard to veterans. But early on in our work, I had learned about the City Club, and for a number of reasons became a member, including the fact that Senator Bob Dole, for example, was an honorary co-chairman early on,
Right.
along with Senator Bradley, the famous basketball player, as a Democrat. And so there were people like that, and also the first chairman of the board at this club, Frank Fahrenkopf. So people like that had come together to be part of the club. And when the club manager at that time said, "We are remodeling the club, I have a blank wall out here, I know you're working on Ike, I haven't got a theme for that wall. You interested in doing something on Ike?" And we had just completed a major display in the Metro exit and entry points down in the Reagan building area, right there where those Metro stations are. So we had a large display. And of course, that's with close walking distance. And to have that kind of an offer near to that here made us look bigger than maybe we were at the time. So that worked out, nicely. And then the club came to, I think, be happy with the idea that it was the only location in the capital of the United States where renderings by this world-class architect were on the wall. When I first joined the commission, I'd occasionally run into an old Air Force friend or whatever, and he'd say, "Well, what are you doing these days? I hear you retired." "Yeah, I retired. I'm working on a memorial to Eisenhower." And I'd get 1 or 3 questions. "Well, where are you going to put it?" We didn't know. And they'd be patient with me, and they'd say, "Well, what are you going to do, build a statue to Ike?" So I didn't say where. I didn't know when. And they were starting to wonder if I'd been captured by the Washington bureaucracy or something. Can't think straight anymore. So the next question I would typically get, "Well, when are you going to do it?" And I decided we better start answering those basic questions as quickly as possible. So the first thing we did was, where was it going to be? The second question was, what was it going to be? And the third question was, when? What's the calendar and so forth? And so that's the way this gradually came about and ended up taking a long time. But it took over 40 years for the FDR Memorial, the last previous memorial. So we decided, we did a study that there were 6 national presidential memorials. Ike was number 7 and the first of the 21st century. So this is the last president born in the 19th century, first president to look at reconnaissance photographs taken from satellites in space. He put there.
Right.
Big deal. Ike is a very rich figure.
Right.
And what you're talking about was that, frankly, this small organization I had, tiny in many ways. My boss one day, I said, Rocco, you're asking us to do a lot, but we're not very big. We're small. And he turned to me and he says, you're not small, Carl. You are tiny. This was a man that worked as a special assistant to the President of the United States when he was in his mid-30s.
Wow.
Combat veteran, 10th Mountain Division. He was the first Italian-American born in Salt Lake City, Utah, to be assigned to the executive suite of the White House, along with the first African-American, Fred Morrow. These 2 young men then become friends.
Okay.
It's a special story about Ike, a piece of Ike most people don't know. When you look the next time at the statues of the presidential advisors, you will see one of the 2 civilians. There's one military to illustrate the balance between the military and the civilian dimensions of America. And there is the 2 civilians, and then one of those civilians has Negroid features.
Okay.
Because Ike desegregated the military. Ike desegregated the District of Columbia. That's a whole quiet story.
Wow.
Many people don't know. I say that with the confidence I am displaying here because the world's best specialists have told me why that's true.
Wow. Well, sir, this has been very, very informative and educational, to me. And I know there's an education tied to President Eisenhower. In fact, the location of the memorial is not coincidentally, put right near the Department of Education, because I know that he established that department under his watch. But I learned a lot of other things during this interview, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. It almost made me feel like I was back at a history class at the academy, sir, and I didn't have you as an instructor, but thanks for educating me today, and thank you for being a part of our Veterans Week 2020, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.